What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. I'm Isaiah, and today, as we close out Spooky Month, maybe a little bit after Spooky Month might just go forever. Anyways, I invite you to grab a beverage, a snack, and a comfy seat, and let me talk at you for a minute. Today, I'd like to talk at you about a game that I meant to talk at you about a long time ago. I forgot that I had it. My buddy Josiah sent me a message to be like, hey man, check out this game. And I was like, oh, I've had that game for a long time. So today, we're going to talk about Dracula's America. Dracula's America is a narrative, very story-driven Wild West game. And it can be played kind of as just basic Wild West, similar to something like What a Cowboy. But it offers a gothic horror Wild West experience. And why on earth would you play a regular old West game when you could do it with zombies and vampires? So the story, as I can surmise it, is that at the end of the Civil War / right after the Civil War, Dracula himself, the man, came to the United States and basically enthralled Congress. Like, assassinated Lincoln and then enthralled Congress. So now the United States has just kind of become a wasteland for creatures of the night. And I've known about this game for a long time, and it's taken me sometimes stuff takes me a little while. So the core things that you'll need for it are, it says a 3x3 is optimal, but will run on a 2x2 or a 4x4. Models, which you can kit bash your own, you can buy them wherever you want. North Star does make the official line for all the factions. I don't know what the situation with ordering from North Star right now would be with all the tariff situation, so I don't know if that's an option for us on this side of the pond right now because I haven't looked into it. Terrain, obviously, which can be as simple or as elaborate as you would like. D6, D8, and D10. A deck of cards for each player. Tape measure. Tokens. They do make a token set that you can purchase. I have purchased it because I got it when I bought some of the monsters that they make. And your reference sheets, roster sheets if you're going to be playing a campaign, which I feel like campaign is the way this game is meant to be played and is going to properly shine. Then we come into kind of the basic things. Contact, which is base-to-base touching, dice, measuring, all the kind of basic stuff you're going to see at the beginning of the rulebook. One thing that does jump out is that it says there's, instead of using a lot of stats to keep up with things, it just splits all models into either novices, veterans, or heroes, and each is associated to a different dice type. I like that. I think that'll make a lot of things go a lot faster, potentially, once I learn the game, of course. Novices are a D6, veterans a D8, and heroes a D10. We then hit a quick section on tests. So we determine our base number of dice, D6, D8, D10 accordingly, and how many of those dice we have. So like a 3-dice shooting test would be 3 D6s for a novice, 8s for the veterans, and 10s for the heroes. We apply modifiers, which affect the number of dice that you roll, not the results of the rolled dice. And then, of course, we roll the dice. 5 or betters are successes, and 4 or lesses are failures. And that immediately strikes me as interesting because naturally, the more advanced a character is, the better a dice he has, the better chance they have of being successful. So off gate, I really, really like that. And then tally the number of successes to determine, it's been hard for me to talk all week, y'all, to determine the outcome of the test. We then have the anatomy of the game, which is your basic round structure. So you have your draw phase, where each player is going to draw their hand equal to half the number of models they currently have on the table, rounded up. I feel like that rounded up is going to be important. And then an extra card if the posse's boss is still on the table. As you play cards, you lay them face down, and then they go to a discard pile. And we have the action phase. Now this feels very, very much like What a Cowboy. I think it's What a Cowboy. I may be thinking of a different game. But anyways, you're playing high card to see who activates first. And once everybody's having activation, you repeat it. So you're doing it not for the turn, you're doing it each time you're going into a new set of model activations. So if you got just a handful of high cards, you could just nut out the opponent and just like hammer down, or you could just have... I think there's some fun potential there. I think there's also potential to slow the game down. We'll see. We then have the NPC phase where obviously non-player controlled models will do their thing. I'm assuming they have an AI that they will follow or some type of instructions. And in the recovery phase where done tokens, which we'll talk about later, are removed, downed models get the opportunity to recover, and the posse may be required to take a bottle check if they've been slapped around hard enough. Then we come to one of our first pieces of art in the book. This is lovely. We then dig a little bit deeper into activations. But before we do, if you're still hanging out, consider smashing the buttons, leaving a comment, checking out the links in the description. Any and all of those things help push this content and these games out to more people who may be looking for something new. So when you're flipping your cards, there is a hierarchy to break ties. Highest value to lowest. Black cards resolve before red cards. If it's the same value, for example, an ace of clubs and an ace of spades, then there's a roll-off. If they are identical cards, like two people play the 8 of hearts, then there is an event that will occur. When it's your turn to activate, you have some options. And I think I like this because you draw fewer cards than you have models, so it potentially forces some decisions that you wouldn't normally have to make. That mainly being who's not going to do anything or who's going to do less. So first of all, if everybody has a done token, which is what you give them after they activate, you pass. You can choose to do a solo activation where one model will do 2 actions. Weapons can only be fired once, but if you have 2 weapons, you can shoot more than one of them. And each action must be made separately, and that could be like moving, shooting, fighting, or lookout, peeping the situation. Or you can do a dual action where you'll have 2 models that each get to do one thing. And then you discard and repeat the process for the next set of activations. If your deck runs out of cards, because you don't reshuffle until the deck runs out. So once that happens, you just shuffle up. We then come to another cool piece of art, which I'm going to show you because I have the model for this. This was part of the pack of bad guys that I bought from North Star a while back. If during this whole activation determination process you only have 1 card in your hand, then you can choose to use that card whenever you want during the phase. You still gotta put it down and follow the normal rules, but you can use it when you please. If you choose to move, it is 4 inches at a time, and you can turn, pivot, whatever, as many times as you want, but it seems that we have a front 180 arc of line of sight, so that's fun. Sometimes I like it when a game has model facing, sometimes I don't. It just depends on how active my brain is that day, but I like having options among different games, obviously. And then difficult terrain, anything like that, is going to be 2 inches traveled for every 1 inch actually moved. When you move, you can't end your move on top of somebody. You can't end within an inch of an enemy unless you intend to contact or engage them. And if a model is in contact with a linear, so we're talking walls, fences, things like that, if both people are touching it, and they're within an inch of each other, they're engaged. And both of them are fortified. If it's only one of them, then one of them would be fortified, which I assume Haven't gotten to it yet, but assume is going to have to deal with your saves or your ability to be hit. When you charge a model, though, if you do choose to close that distance, with a model you see, so you can't charge around a corner. But when you do come into contact with them, you get a free melee. If you're in the thick of it with a foe and you don't want to be in the thick of it with them anymore, you can attempt to disengage, which is a one dice disengage test of whatever your assigned dice type is. If successful, you disengage. If you fail, you still disengage, but you got to make a 5-up save for each enemy you were in contact with, representing them getting an attack of opportunity. I love it when games have attacks of opportunity. Love it. You can never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, ever disengage into contact with another enemy. So you can't bail out of one fight to go jump in another fight. Vertical movement, so climbing is 2 inches for each inch measured. You may climb terrain that is higher than your total movement as long as you started the action in contact with it, and then you place it at the top or the bottom as is applicable. You can choose to just jump off a building at 0 movement cost to just put yourself at the bottom. However, if that jump is more than 2 inches, you will take fall or potentially take fall damage. It counts as falling. You can jump up to 4 inches as long as you have the movement to reach the other side. If you run out of movement, you will fall at the spot that your movement ran out. When you fall, you must make a 5-up save for every 2 inches you fell beyond that first free 2 inches that you get. If one of your weapons should happen to jam, you may spend a full move action to unjam it. We then come to shooting, so we have normally you can only shoot once unless you have a weapon or a skill that allows you to fire it more than once. If that's the case, you resolve them separately. So you pick your weapon, pick your target. Now with the targeting, you're supposed to target the closest model. If it's a model that's on a 40mm base, they can always be targeted. But you're supposed to target the closest one. Now, you can make a 1-dice spot check to try to ignore that limitation. And if you pass, you can shoot at whoever you want. But if you fail, you forfeit your chance to shoot entirely. Models that are downed or engaged can be ignored when determining closest model. Check to see which of the range bands of your weapon you are within, short, medium, or long. Then make a 3-dice shooting test with the following modifiers. -1 for cover, -1 for long range, +1 for shooting them in the back, +1 for shooting them at short range, +1 if the shooter, you, are elevated. And again, those modifiers affect the number of dice rolled, not the results rolled on those dice. No successes means you miss, obviously, but no successes with and a 1 as well means that your weapon could potentially jam. So you got to check to see if you're going to have to lose a whole movement action to clear that. Then your target, if you hit them, gets to make their save. Now, a save is not a test, so the normal modifiers and things don't apply to them. It is a 1 grit test. And the target number is determined by the number of successes. So 1 success is a 5-up, then 6-up, etc., up to 6 or more successes, at which case it is just a 10-up no matter how many more you go. If you fail, you're going to take damage. Even if the roll would be impossible, you still need to make the save for reasons that we will discuss later. That jam test is determined by rolling the weapons jam die, so that'll be on the weapons profile. Success, you're good. Failure, you get a jam token, and then you got to spend your movement to undo it. And it goes into some weapons, like sawed-off shotguns, do not follow that. They have their own way of doing things that I'm not going to dig into right now, but I like that they have that distinction between precision weapons and indiscriminate weapons. I like that a lot. Then we come to cover, which is if it crosses terrain or models that are at least an inch high, or terrain such as woodland, ruined buildings, swamplands, whatever, you get the cover. If you're inside of an area terrain, you get the cover. You are allowed to shoot into a melee combat as well. And it has one of my favorite things, which is the potential for shooting your own guy. So how bad do you need to try to deal with that model that's currently engaged in fisticuffs? And if you choose to do that, it's just a roll-off. And whoever wins the roll-off gets to pick who gets shot at. And then you go through the steps of a regular attack. We come to the weapon summaries for all the different options, which there are not a lot: pistol, carbine, shotgun, bow, rifle. So, and then heavy pistols, 6 guns, Lemme pistols, buffalo guns, sawed-off shotguns. A decent variety, but not an overwhelming amount. That's good. And speaking of melee, that's, as I just was, it's not too much different than shooting, except for that both people do swing. So you're making a 3-dice fight test with the modifiers being +1 if you charged, -1 if you're attacking a fortified defender, and -1 for each extra enemy that outnumbers you. Roll it, total your successes. Attacker scores more, they win and strike the defender. Defender scores more, they win and strike the attacker. I like it when games have the potential to get smacked back when you go into a melee. It's one of my favorite things about the Silver Bayonet, other than obviously a cool alternate history gothic horror setting, which is obviously a thing for me. If the results are equal, then the model with the single highest scoring die wins by 1. Otherwise, the fight is a draw and has no effect. When you take your save, it uses the same chart as shooting. And then shooting and melee use the same damage chart, which goes off the amount you failed by. So like if your target was a 7 and you rolled a 4, you failed by 3. If you fail by 1 or 2, you're shaken. 3 or 4, you are downed. By 5 or more, you are removed as a casualty. So stuff could potentially die pretty quick. No wounds to keep up with, it would seem. If you become shaken, you treat all of your test rolls as 1 grit die lower to a minimum of a d6. So if you're a novice, there's not a whole lot to worry about there from the penalty. However, as a veteran or hero, you would suffer a penalty. If you take more damage while you are shaken, you immediately become downed. If you become downed, you are placed prone on the table and you can't take any actions other than a 2-inch crawl, which uses a move action. Down models can be moved through, they don't block line of sight. They cannot be shot at, but they can be engaged in a melee. If you do that, then there's no test, you just kick the snot out of them, put their mouth on the curb, and say goodnight, Sally. That reminds me a lot of Grimdark Future Firefight, like the OPR skirmishy games. If you become down within 1 inch of an elevated position, which is 2 inches or more, so most buildings, you just fall off. When going in to try to finish somebody off, you cannot target the downed model if there are enemies on their feet that are also in contact with you, which reminds me a little bit of Relic Blade with being able to defend your compatriots. You can drag a downed friend at half movement. It says it counts as like. And then we have the lookout action, which works kind of like an Overwatch. You do it and it immediately ends their activation. You can do something else first, like move into position, but once you're on lookout, you're done with that model, and instead of a done token, they get a lookout token, and then they can use that to react to an enemy action. And once they react, you remove said token. To declare that reaction or to use that reaction, an enemy in line of sight of you must declare an action, and then you play the old blue magic interruptsies. With your reaction, you've got a few options. You can make 1 shoot, 1 move, which can be used to put you in contact with the enemy, which would then result in a free melee, or you can use it to disengage. If you use it to disengage, like they came into you or whatever, then there's no disengage test. You just bounce out of there. That rounds out the action phase into the NPC phase, where you have 2 potential kinds of NPCs, bystanders, or 3. Bystanders and scenario specifics, and supernaturals. The bystanders and scenarios would activate first, followed by the supernaturals. Then into the recovery phase, where we're going to remove our action activated tokens and then make recovery tests. This is a 3 dice test, and you can have up to a max of +1, flat and even, if you have a friendly non-down model in contact with them. If you get no successes, they succumb to their wounds. Removed, but they don't count as victory points. 1 to 2, they remain down, and 3 or more, they summon a reserve of courage and get back to the killing. And then lastly in the phase, you have the bottle check. So that's if you are reduced to half or less, rounded down, of your starting number. However, downed models do not count as on the table for these purposes. So if a bunch of people are down, you could still be forced to take the bottle check. If your leader has to do it, if able. If he does, it is a 3 dice check. If your leader's gone, then the next highest rank does it, but they only get 1 dice to do it. If you get at least 1 success, you stay and fight. If no successes, then you bottle out and everybody bails. No tests are required, and any loot, bystanders, so on that they held are left within 1 inch of where they last were on the table. If everybody bottles out in the same turn, the game is a draw. And in a campaign, models that are not down do not have to roll for injuries if their posse bottles out. Also in a campaign, you may choose to voluntarily fail a bottle check if things have just gotten crazy. We then come into some advanced rules for mounted models, which I'm not going to go into right now because I don't usually play these games with mounted models for a skirmish game. It's just I usually just play on foot. If you really want to hear me talk about it, let me know in the comments and I'll come back and do a section on it. And then we have dynamite, and there's also a special reaction involving dynamite where you can try to shoot the dynamite that they're holding, which is pretty freaking cool. For your innocent bystanders, you roll in D3 plus 2, and that's how many you get. They will always move as far as they can away from the closest visible enemy. If there are none, they will move randomly. They are slowed by rough ground, but they never climb or leap things. They will stop an inch away from another model if their movement would take them into contact. They can be grabbed and used as a human shield, which is kind of cool. So if you grab one and you're holding them and you would fail a save and take damage, they take it instead, which is pretty cool. You can shoot them or fight at them just like you would any other enemy, if you needed to do that. Then there's some special terrain stuff that can blow up, cactus patches, things like that. And then we come into our building the posse section, which we're not going to talk about right now. I'll go deeper into that when I get to the point where I'm actually ready to put this on the table. And it's actually got 2 different sections. It's got one for building your posse for a one-off game, and then a separate section for building a posse for a campaign. We've got 8 scenarios in the one-off section that I can see, and it's probably going to be the same 8 scenarios in the other, but maybe not. The campaign runs a certain number of turns. It says usually 6 to 12. And it has some steps. So you got challenge phase, injury phase, advancement phase, income phase, purchase phase, and infamy phase. Challenging phase is where you're going to actually play your game. Injury phase is going to happen usually first part of your post game after that game to see how everybody's doing. If the game ends as a casualty, if a model ends the game as a casualty, then you've got your downed model to your injury table to see what happens. Our advancement table, where our friends can get better. The advancement system is clean. and simple. I think it's going to be very enjoyable. So each eligible model, which is anybody who did not die during the game, gets to make an advancement roll, which is your grit dice, and then add your current XP. You get XP by failing this roll. So every time you fail the roll, you get another XP. If you score a max roll, so 6, 8, or 10 respectively, then you have advanced. If you roll a d6 to see what happens. On a 1, you get to choose a skill. On 2 to 5, you get a random skill. And on 6, you get a rank up. So like novice to veteran to hero. If you're already a hero, the rank up is a random skill result instead. I feel like they should have made that another choice there, but it is what it is. Your income phase is exactly what it sounds like. If you lose or draw, you get $46. If you win, you get $56. When you're rolling that income, though, you could potentially have an encounter. So any doubles, triples, or 4 of a kinds result in an encounter, of which there are 2 charts. So you figure out which chart you're on, and then figure out what's going to happen to you. I like that system for determining random encounters a lot. There's a 2 of a kind table, a 3 of a kind table, and a 4 of a kind table. I like that a whole lot for determining if stuff's going to happen. We then come to the purchase phase, where you can recruit new people to the posse. Preachers, pugilists, prospectors, moonshiners, doc, random novices, things like that. Flesh out the crew, buy and sell equipment, gear, horses, all that fun stuff. Then we come to the infamy phase. Infamy is determined by base, which is your total infamy value for the members of your posse, which is 1 for novices, 2 for veterans, 3 for heroes, and each skill that a model has is another +1, plus the number of models in the posse. So combined total plus number, and each time you win, you gain an infamy. Infamy is used, I believe, yes, to provide an underdog bonus in case one party is much more advanced than another. The bonus comes post-game. It's in the form of some extra dollars and some extra XPs, depending on the gap between the 2 posses. We then get some fluff in the middle of the book. I don't hate it. It's odd to me layout-wise. Normally you would see it either at the beginning or the end of the book, but that's fine. We come into our unusual models, so supernatural things, flying models, ethereal models, things with arcane powers, and how to cast those arcane powers. You get these powers either by having access from your faction or by giving a hired gun a grimoire item, which turns them into an arcanist. When that happens, their personal infamy goes up by 1. You can only have 1 of them in your party, and when it becomes an arcanist, it must choose 3 powers, and choose carefully because they cannot be changed after you pick them. When your arcanist is ready to use their eldritch powers, they make a 3-dice casting test, and you're looking for a number of successes determined by the difficulty of the spell, which will be in the spell's write-up. Equal to or more successes, you passed. If you fail and at least 1 die is a 1, you miscast. So we got perils, which means you immediately become shaken or downed if you are already shaken. You can only have 1 instance of a spell active at any given time. If the caster becomes downed or incapacitated in any other way, then all spell effects are removed. If you really want to get that spell off or need to get that spell off, you can choose to concentrate. So you sacrifice a move action before you do your spell, so you got to use a solo action to do this. And then you gain a +1 dice to your concentration check, or to your spell check, when you do that after concentrating. We then have the option you can summon some different things: behemoths, hellhounds, seraphims, swamp baka, temple snakes, vengeful shades, wendigos. And then we come into the different arcane powers, of which there are quite a few to choose from. We then come into the factions that you have access to. So we have the Twilight Order. So think from ancient times. So from ancient Greece, ancient Rome. They're bringing the whooping to the supernatural down through history. We have the Red Hand Coven, which are your vampire cowboys. Enough said. I don't think I need to go deeper into that. And I don't want to spoil all the fluff if you'd like to discover it for yourself. Maybe if you like, maybe I can go deeper if people want to see it. But for now, I don't want this video to go for hours and hours and hours. But vampire cowboys, that's a W. Skinwalker tribes, which are going to be your Native American based posses. The Crossroads cult, which is going to be warlocky, demon summoning cowboys and Wild West people. So definitely going to have a guy in a white suit involved with their nonsense, I would think. And some immaculate mustaches. Because they're gentlemanly. The demons can get their hands dirty. We then have a faction that all of these are cool, but I think that for the setting, the next two factions are just, they're this. So first we have the Congregation, which is comprised mostly of former slaves and abolitionists who are waging a guerrilla war through the swamps of the South to battle the Dark Confederacy. Two of them. That is primo. Just perfect to the setting. That would make such an amazing narrative. It's just, that's good storytelling. Also, they get zombies that they can, if one of your guys dies, you can turn him into a zombie. Yeah, that's a W. And then we come to their counterpart, the Dark Confederacy. So not only was the South devastated by Sherman, which is accurate to real history, it was also devastated by the undead and the creatures of the night. So now we have these leftover Confederates who have become absolute, heinous necromancers. Also justifiable for them to have a guy in a white suit. Love it. We then have an alternate to the regular unexpected events thing, which is the supernatural events, which could be armed civilians, unnatural gloom, things that become haunted, arcane storms, zombie and vampire outbreaks. This is definitely the chart you want to be using, as well as some unwelcome guests, which are things ranging from jackalopes to vampire ancients and pale riders. Again, why would you not want to play all the weird supernatural gothic horror elements if you're going to play the game? We also have some supernatural hired guns, which can only be used in the campaign play. They are the Carpathian Guard, the Maverick Arcanist, the Stitch Doctor, and the Templar of the Order. So knights with guns. Yes. Sorry, I had to take a second and get myself together at the thought of Knights Templar with Winchester repeating rifles. Anyways, we got some supernatural gear, blessed water, grimoires, holy symbol. I wonder if with the blessed... See, I wish that blessed water, it should work the same way it does in real life, where any amount of blessed water added to any amount of regular water makes an endless supply of blessed water. And we also have various encounters for your post-game campaign, like your 2 of a kind, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, for supernatural stuff. Obviously, that's the one that I want to use. Then we have a roster sheet, which is really basic, and the game includes a solid quick reference at the back of the book, which, in my opinion, I don't understand rule books that don't have that, because why wouldn't you? Not everybody is willing to do this and highlight everything in their book. Some people like to keep it pristine, and I'm not throwing shade at those people. I respect them. I used to be one of them. But this just facilitates my play. But you should always have a quick reference at the back of your book. You just should. So game developers, writers out there, put a quick reference at the back of your book. Please. And that, my friends, is going to do it for our talk about Dracula's America, Shadows of the West by Jonathan Haythorne Waite. Thanks so much for tuning in, hanging out, chilling, letting me talk at you for a minute. I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day.